Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm Carla with Raised to Walk, and this is a Christmas edition on my channel, and we're going to be talking about Christmas stories, Christmas traditions, and creating Christmases that can be remembered. But before we get started, a little bit about this channel. Here we share good thoughts about God's words, and I publish Bible studies and videos about books. So if you are interested in either of those things, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications so you can get updates about new videos. So Christmas stories, what are they and what should they look like? Now, a few months ago, I published a book called Classic Christmas Stories, and this is a collection of older Christmas stories. And one of the things that I noticed when I was putting together the stories for that compilation is that those older stories really have more of a tendency to tell stories that are more like life. They're not Hallmark movie type of stories. They're more about sometimes tragedy. Sometimes it's a lot has to do with the struggles of life. And I really think that those stories are they're a better reminder, and they better enable us to understand what Christmas really is about. It's about Jesus coming into the world, into our mess, and walking through it with us. A lot of times people have this idea of what Christmas is and or what it should be, about this perfect time with, the perfectly wrapped presents and the great dinners and, all this bunch of fun family activities. And then we have this image of what it's supposed to be like, and then we're disappointed and we're stressed out and upset because ours doesn't match up to that. And Christmas isn't really about that at all. I have a Bible study video that's one from my church. It was about the call of Jesus' disciples. But it starts with a review of the prologue of John and how that is echoing Genesis 1. And in Genesis 1, God speaks into the chaos and he creates good in the middle of the chaos and the darkness. And so when we go to John chapter 1 and John's prologue, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, right? It is a story of Jesus coming at the darkest time. In the middle of a bunch of turmoil, he brought good and walked through it with us. And he didn't come into a perfect family himself. He came into a lot of family drama. We know that, his relatives didn't want Mary in their house. And he had to be born outside in some stable or cave or whatever it was. We know that there was a lot of family tension because his brothers didn't believe in him, and it seemed like there was probably a lot of conflict there. He came into the reality of humanness and dealt with it all. And so if we think of Christmas as anything other than that, then we're not really understanding the meaning of it fully. The second thing I want to talk about is traditions in your own Christmas stories and how the two are tied together. A couple weeks ago, I did a segment on my friend Charlotte's Equip for the Holiday Workshop, and I talked about traditions. One of the things I talked about was one of my family traditions growing up, and that is we always had, on my mom's side of the family, we always had lutefisk, which is this Norwegian tradition. It's cod treated in lye and is one of the grossest things you can possibly imagine. The smell is absolutely horrible. The texture is just, it's like this gross, I don't even know. It's so disgusting. And it is so bad that it has actually been used as a challenge on The Amazing Race, eating lutefisk. So that's a roadblock on The Amazing Race. That's just called Christmas at the Janellas. It's disgusting. And every single Christmas, my uncles would try to make me eat it, and it's so disgusting. And I've never understood that fish. I mean, why would anybody want to eat it? And I've even researched it. Norwegians in Norway do not eat that fish. It's only Norwegian Americans. It's poverty food. It's poverty food. So going back to traditions and telling your stories at Christmas, I mentioned that I've been helping my friend Mark teach his Bible studies in Pakistan via Zoom. And I mentioned a couple weeks ago in my Dorothy Sayers read along announcement video that I was helping some Afghan Christians who had evacuated to Pakistan, helping them get their documents in order. We were trying to get babies' birth certificates right at that moment. So update, babies do have their birth certificates. We had that part done. So we're kind of moving into the next phase, a little bit on that later. But I have been teaching the classes myself since the beginning of the month because Mark isn't well right now, and that's basically all I know. So we are just kind of moving along, and I've been teaching the classes, and I know he has a curriculum kind of that he goes through. He's been spending the last several months in John chapter 1 going over the different arguments for God. But I don't have that curriculum, so I've just been kind of winging it as I've been teaching these classes. So in the house church class, the first week, I just told them a little bit about my backstory and shared my testimony, and we also discussed evidences for the resurrection. And then the next week, super fun, we talked about Christmas and some of the traditions. So we're talking a little bit about a Christmas celebration, and I was really curious to know how they would celebrate it, because the things that we think of as Christmas traditions are really cultural, like depending on what country we come from or what ethnic group we're in. There's different Christmas traditions all over the world, and so I was really curious to know how they would celebrate Christmas. And he talked about getting a Santa suit, and I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. So on the next class, we talked about Christmas and St. Nicholas. They call him Baba Noel. So I asked him what he knew about Santa Claus, because I wanted to explain the story behind the real historical person, St. Nicholas. And if it were here in the U.S., I would have to be cautious about who I told that to, because, I might be blowing some parents, little stories that they've told about Santa Claus. And he said, well, we don't really know anything about it, so we just want you to tell us. So that day we talked about St. Nicholas and his background. It was really cool to be able to do that, because one of my projects in the apologetics program was I had to do a presentation on your favorite apologetic topic, and I chose should Christians celebrate Christmas, just because I've been around a lot of people who are all Christmas is pagan people, and so this was kind of my response to that, because I think that's a really ridiculous position to take. But anyway, you can go watch that video if you want to see what that presentation was. Just a warning, the lighting is horrible. I'm not sure this sounds that great, but I was on a deadline and I had to get it done. It was raining, and I totally skipped over the part about lighting and the reading that we had. So that's the story behind that. But it was really cool to be able to share what Christmas is and why we do certain things and as Christmas traditions, and to be able to kind of frame their perspective and understanding about celebrating Christmas. It's just really awesome. It was just so fun to be able to do that. And they had started that class with a song. The kids always come in and they sing a song. And that day they were singing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." And after I finished the lesson and asked them if they had any questions, the lady who has been teaching the children and teaching them English and teaching them songs asked what good cheer was. We bring you good cheer. And that was a phrase that they didn't really understand. And so I was able to explain that we give gifts to help encourage people and just basically show our gratitude to God. We're bringing these gifts to help encourage them to make their life more cheerful. And so for the rest of the story, I was explaining who St. Nicholas was, and I didn't really plan out the lesson as in writing it out as I do some of my lessons. I was just kind of talking through it, and as I was doing that, I realized just how relevant St. Nicholas's life was to them and their situation. So that group is mainly Hazara, which is an ethnic minority in Afghanistan that if you see stories about the Taliban, attacking a village, it's probably going to be a Hazara village. There was one just a couple of weeks ago where they killed 14 people in a Hazara village. So even if they're not Christians, they're probably going to be subject to persecution just because of their ethnicity. But they as a group, scholars have done genetic tracings, and they think that Tsars came to Afghanistan during Genghis Khan's conquering of that area. Genetically, they're Turkish, Mongolian, and Persian. So St. Nicholas was Greek, but he was the head of a church in Myra, Turkey. And so I told them he really is more theirs than he is ours in the West, because they are, descended from Turkish ancestry, and that is where St. Nicholas ministered. And we talked about the reasons that he was honored as a saint. He was a really good shepherd of his flock and cared for people. And so we told him the story about him giving the gift for the dowry and the stockings. I also shared that, when he was young, there was really intense persecution of Christians, like one of the most severe times of persecution in all the first 300 years of Christianity. And the reason that he became a leader in the church was because all the other people before him had been martyred. And there's a story about him. The person that was appointing the head of that church just prayed and said, God, I need you to send someone. Nicholas walked in. He's like, okay, you're it. But he was very young when he became the head of the church. And that's really what I've been seeing in this effort that we have of getting things together for these Afghan Christians, is that it's most of the time it's young people that are stepping up and helping out, whether it's among the Christian Afghans or it's Muslims that are doing things that are helping us facilitating this. And they're young people. They're like Gen Z. And so that's been really interesting to see. But Nicholas was young. They just seeing a need and stepping in and stepping up to do it. So we talked about that the next week. And this past Monday, it's the first day of Hanukkah. So I was telling them about Hanukkah and what the light in the temple symbolized. And we talked about how Jesus said we are the temple and we are supposed to be those lights. And so many of the songs that the children sing have to do with light. I hope that Mark is back full speed, but it's been really fun to be able to have these lessons and kind of be a part of this. And it was not until this week that, as I was thinking through like what I was going to share about Hanukkah and how it relates to their situation. And if you don't know the story of Hanukkah, in that video I mentioned, should Christians celebrate Christmas? I do talk a little bit more about that. But it was just, Hanukkah is about the miracle is in the preservation, right? It's not a burning bush. It's not the sea being parted. It's not these big, extravagant miracles. It's just about God seeing you through, God preserving and seeing you through. And that's kind of where they're at right now. So we don't have an out. We don't know, just even starting like looking for actual immigration options. We're not even to that point yet. But we're just working on getting him through, preserving him right now. And there's been so many things. It's just been a wild time period. I just feel like I've been dropped into this, almost like this adventure, and no idea what's coming next. It's been a little crazy. But as I was preparing for that, it just finally clicked to me what the whole thing with the lutefisk was about. With Hanukkah, they light the candles one each night, but they don't just light it. There's a story. The same with Passover. If you ever go to a Passover celebration, they have like a whole 2-hour program about going through what the different elements mean. And so there's this transmission, not just of the thing that you do, but there's also the story about what it represents and what to remember. The other part about my family Christmas is that not me, but collectively, they eat lutefisk and they tell dumb Norwegian jokes. It's like a whole thing. If you didn't know this, they have entire books about dumb Norwegian jokes. And I realized that was part of the story about remember where you came from, remember what you've been through. This is another thing that I shared with them. Every single group that's come to the United States, there's always been this resistance, this pushback against this other coming in. This has always been like this, every single people group. And when Norwegians came over, said they were dumb Norwegians, I think kind of Swedes kind of went through the same thing, but they took those insults and they owned them. And they remember that too, right? And the lutefisk is a poverty food. And it's a reminder, this is where we came from. This is what we've been through. So whatever comes, we'll get that through that too. But the thing is, if you don't know the story behind it, it's just a bunch of stinking fish. You know, it's like you don't know what it is and what it represents, then you just kind of miss it. If you don't have the story about what the symbol is supposed to represent, then you know, you completely, the meaning is completely lost. And I think that's sometimes Christmas, that's true for a lot of us. We miss the meaning. And like I said, you know, it's not about having things perfect, right? It's not about putting on a show and like trying to say that you have this perfect life, this perfect family, you know, this perfect situation. It's about recognizing that we need a savior, and he came. And Christmas is the day that the great reversal started. And it's about starting to push back against that darkness. If you're sitting here the day before Christmas just feeling overwhelmed, you know, Jesus was promised to be Emmanuel, God with us. And God did come to be with us, and he is with us. When we make Jesus the Lord of life, we have the Holy Spirit, and he is with us. And he's willing to bring us this peace, right? As long as, but we have to be willing to receive it. We have to be willing to recognize that we can't do it on our own, that we're not perfect. And this is, if you're having stress about things not being just so for Christmas, just stop and ask yourself, well, what difference does it make? Life is still going to go on. And this past week has been kind of difficult. I had a real high on Sunday. I thought we were ready to like move into phase 2. And then this week has been pretty crazy. It's been there's been a lot of good things that have happened this week, but it's been pretty overwhelming. And I think I've called Charlotte like every day for a week, my friend Charlotte. And she kind of had to talk me down a couple times. And she said, Harlette, no one's going to die if this thing doesn't get done this week. Just do it next week. And it just reminded me, there's different levels of urgency. So getting the Afghan Christians their visas so they're not expelled is an entirely different level of urgency than this other thing that I've been working on. So it's important to keep things in perspective. I think that traditions are good if we have the stories around them, and if those traditions and stories help us remember the things that we have been through, then it can be an encouraging thing rather than, you know, stressing people out. You know, I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in stuff and the burden that we forget the gift. So the last thing I want to talk about, this is an appeal for my Afghan Christian. Like I mentioned, we are in what I consider phase 1. We're working on getting them safe in place right now, and as we're working on getting all of their documents together. And then phase 2 is starting to look for immigration options for them. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's going on with Afghan refugees. It's a total mess. Even people who have already been approved for their immigration applications, they're not just getting the path to citizenship is still stalled in a mess. And for people who have no approval anywhere, they're in a very precarious situation. If they had their refugee card, that would make things a little easier. But since they don't, they are not allowed to work. They're not allowed to have bank accounts. The visas that they got there are all expired. The visa applications, when they apply for them, are just sitting there. And then there is that December 31st deadline that they don't have valid visas. They have to leave or be expelled. If they don't have outside help, they don't have family, or know somebody in the West that's willing to help them or somehow get connected with an organization, then they're in a real bind. One of the people that contacted me through Twitter, which I swear that is like a literal act of God because nobody sees my tweets, but he connected with me and he's gotten the best connections for us ever. I mean, amazing contacts. He is living on the streets and has a phone that he just connects to on Wi-Fi out in the marketplace. So like I said, our first goal is to make sure that they're safe in place and provided for. And we got some of their initial documentation in order when I recorded that video a couple weeks ago. We had the money for the baby's birth certificates and some passport extensions that we could do in the embassy, in the Afghanistan embassy in Islamabad. And money still hadn't been able to be received and picked up. So that all happened, and I just have one more birth certificate to pick up, and those things are in place. But the next step is we have to have visas, so they're not constantly at threat for being deported. There's checkpoints through the city. They have to show their documents, be questioned. One of our translators said that he's been taken into the police station, before, just questioned. It's a real stressful situation. So we need to get their visas in order. But the good news is that this Canadian minister that I mentioned has been able to connect us with a US-based nonprofit that also has an affiliate in Pakistan, and the lead in that Pakistan affiliate is somebody he's known for a long time that has worked in the area. They are willing to administer a fund for us to be able to help our people, because getting the money is a lot, and getting these visas for 60 people is going to be a lot. Our prayer was to find somebody that we could trust to handle our visa applications, and we got an answer to that prayer. Our second prayer request was we needed a channel for the money to go through, because it was going to be a lot, and we found that one too. So we do have those things in place. We have a fund for the money to go into. We have a way to get the visas, and so now we just need the funds to come in. So if you'd like to be a part of Team Kabul Hope and help like Afghans get their visas, I'm going to put a link in the description, and all you do is you can donate to OM USA, and in the comments you put it's for the Afghan ministry in Pakistan, and then -AZM. So I'll put it in the description, put it on the screen, put that in the comments, and then when you donate, if you send me an email and let me know at contact@racertowalk.org and let me know that it was sent, I will tell them, and the U.S. organization will tell the Pakistan office to release the funds immediately, and that person will administer it and make sure that the funds go where they need to, which is also amazing, because just like transfer times for money, it's all been a mess. So this is absolutely amazing. So again, if you want to help out with that, then I'm going to put the link in the description. So that's my Christmas story. I'm telling you, this is going to be a movie someday, because it's been a little wild. But I hope you're having a great Christmas. I hope you really can experience the peace and joy of the season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.